Okay, hey, how's it going? Okay, so this is kind of campaign prep setup, whatever, part two. Um, kind of considering, I guess, all of these first sessions as my session zero, just setting things up. But I think I just really need this one more maybe, and then the next session I can actually start diving into adventures. Couple things. One, let's just dive over to my little map here, here we go, which I did share actually in a solo RPG Facebook group that I've been a part of for a little while now. I had some interesting comments there, as well as when I was pointing out what I was doing and talking a little bit about not entirely sure how I'm going to kind of build out the hexes and determine things. When I was a kid running these kinds of campaigns, I'd just be like, you travel for 2 days straight and run into another town. Pfft, cool, whatever. But I don't really want to do that. I want that kind of game master emulation a little bit here. So I was kind of looking for some ideas, and I was thinking maybe I could just use Mythic and be like, is the next hex, some whatever is going to be most likely, from the our first town here, maybe is the next hex just simply farmland, or is it plains, is it whatever, and assign kind of a mythic element on the fate chart, essentially, figure out what my odds are and roll. But I don't know, maybe I'll kind of do a little bit of that. But then somebody had pointed out, I'm pretty sure it was the creator, had pointed out Flextail Hexcrawl toolkit, which I've been starting to kind of look through here, and even if I don't use all of it, I found the kind of tables that I want, which are if I'm on the plains and I want to move into the next hex, what is that next hex likely going to be? And it kind of looks at it has several different tables for the type of terrain you're in, and determines the odds of kind of like what the next one is. I think it's just a D20 roll. So Flextail kind of looks like it's going to at least serve some of the purpose that I've kind of got in mind here. I also grabbed a copy of Game Master's Book of Random Tables, which has a whole bunch of things which I kind of need right now, specifically around towns, because I really kind of want to work towards building out the town. Which I should note here, that our first port town here has a name. I actually turned to my brother and just went, give me the name of a port town. And he came up with Port Cirric. So Port Cirric is actually what I'm going to be building out. So I need to know a few things, I think, before we even get to that. Now, we've decided it's a town. Within the random tables here, I can roll a d8 for kind of the size of community I made, and that's everything from like a little tiny thorp to a metropolis of like 25,000 plus people, right? But we know it's going to be a town, so I'm going to kind of just maybe factor in just like that. It is a town. So basically the way it kind of suggesting towns within the random tables is a population of 900 to 2,000 is a small town. A large town would be a population of 2,001 to 5,000, right? That I don't think that quite jives with the general way that D&D works, but because I think, or at least the old school basic set stuff, because I think when we talk about towns, we're talking 1,000 people, 1,500 people, something like that. And afterwards, I think once we hit 2,000, I think it starts to kind of consider that a city. But I figure let's just kind of go with this. I'm not as worried about what we call it. Town, city, metropolis, whatever. Versus kind of what population is. So Port Cirric is on the coast of whatever the ocean is. Not overly concerned about what we're going to call that right now. What I'm going to do is create a Google Doc for each of these, each pretty much point of interest here. So our population here, so let's kind of like start maybe figuring things out, and I'll just put it right into the chat here, so I don't have to bounce back and forth between the Google Doc. So what's our population? Where's my fate chart? Let's even just bring out the fate chart here for Mythic, and we'll turn to that. And right now, we are dealing with a chaos factor of 5. So we're going to stick to that, right? So if we come over here, we've got a chaos factor of 5. Fate chart is now out in front of me here. So we've got, for those who may not know Mythic, so it's the fate chart is essentially kind of the crux of the core element of the Mythic Game Master Emulator Oracle. In the 2nd edition version, there's a chaos factor, which goes up and down after the end of every scene, depending on whether you feel that your characters kind of had some control over the scene or not. If things go really weird, maybe the chaos factor increases because they didn't have control over the scene. If they kind of really kind of had a handle on what was going on, maybe the chaos factor decreases. So it's always between 1 and 9. We start with 5. And what I'm going to start doing is just asking questions. Usually wouldn't ask more than, say, 2 or 3 questions of Mythic before you just kind of made decisions. But in this case, we're world building, essentially. So Port Cirric is port, so let's start asking questions. We'll call this we'll call our questions a 50-50 chance. Like, so fate goes from impossible to certain, and 50-50 being kind of that midpoint, right? Where you make a lot of rolls when you're just like, I don't know what the odds are. We'll call it 50-50. Is Port Cirric a small town? Let's go with that. Is it a small town? Now we pull out our trusty dice. We roll percentiles. So at a 50-50, a 50 or under is a yes, right? And a 10 or under is an extreme yes. So is it a small town? 37. Yes, it's a small town. Okay. Port Cirric, so if we go by this port, that puts Port Cirric somewhere between 901 to 2,000 people. Does Port Cirric have under 1,000 people? We'll just call that 50-50 again. Yes, it does. So we're going to call Port Cirric, we're going to give Port Cirric the population of, say, 950 people. Is the main economy fishing? Due to its location on the ocean here, I think there's a decent chance. So we're just going to call that 50-50 again. Is the main economy fishing? No, it's not. The main economy trade. So I'm actually going to suggest that maybe we bump this up, because since it's not fishing, it's a port. Trade makes a lot more sense. So I'm going to call that very likely, which brings us up to a 75%. That's 51. So economy, trade, mostly by sea. And what I'll do is afterwards, going back to my Google Doc for just a second. So afterwards, what I will do is go back through here and probably just round this out. Port Cirric, is it predominantly a human settlement? And just because I think this is kind of where things need to begin, I'm going to say that is nearly certain. And we end up with a 67, yes. Predominantly human population. I rolled a 67 there, so yeah, I mean, it's predominantly human. Are there elves? You know, I don't know if I need to ask this. Predominantly human, I'm going to say probably it's a 90% human population, 10% demi-human. Elves, dwarves, halflings. Those are the main demi-human player character types in the old D&D BECMI. Some people call it BECMI. That seems a little. It's just it rolls off the tongue, maybe a little easier. Just sounds weird to me. So we got a little bit of information. So Port Cirric is mainly trade. So is it trading along the with? Is it mainly trading with other cities and nations and such along the coast? I'll call that a likely. Okay, that's 34. So yes. Come back here for a sec. Other communities and nations along the ocean's coast. Specifically on this continent. So it doesn't have a lot of... So by extrapolating from that, does little trade with nationalities across the sea. That doesn't mean it's impossible, because the ship that our main character here, which suddenly the name went right out of my head, Egil, he's coming from the northern reaches. So are there a lot of ships from the northern reaches? Actually, I don't care. That's what I'm going to go with. I don't care. I don't need that question answered. All right. We got a little bit of information about Port Cirric here. So I'm going to use some of the Game Master's Book of Random tables here regarding towns just to determine a couple of other things. So the religious level of the town. So there's a table for that. It's a 1d6. That's a 2. Religious level is they worship just a single god. By extrapolation, I'm going to call that the god of the sea. That god is going to need a name. Do we have something that might give us names for gods, for deities somewhere? I might very well have. Don't know if I'm going to find anything in most of what I've got. Well, you know what? There's an alien names. It doesn't seem right to me. Got some ship names and alien names and such here. Planet names. I'm thinking maybe I'll steal from one of these. Let's just kind of... I'll roll a percentile and I'll consult this first chart here. So this would actually be a spaceship name kind of thing. So 15. That Loyal Chancellor makes no sense on that. Let's kind of flip to the next one. Zeviosa. Zevioso. No. Angeli? No. Just seeing if there's anything maybe within here that kind of is going to have the type of feel that I want. Zop? No. Zrahus? No. Too alien. Kerberos? No. Freeport Prometheus. Now, some of the end of the. Okay, I'm going to come back to the god of the sea. What is the god's name? We need to figure that out. I'll consider things a little bit more regarding that and come up with something. All right. Alright, so the town has surrounding... There's a table here for surrounding terrain types. Now, this will kind of help a little bit also for probably plotting out the initial... the initial Hexcrawl. So what do we roll at? So this town is surrounded mainly by mesas. Seems a little odd for that. Let's roll that again. 16 Savannah. This isn't really a desert thing. Maybe I shouldn't be doing it this way. 17 Swamp. Let's try one more here and see if I like the answer better. That's another 17. 8 Marsh. I'm going to say no. I don't really care much for any of the ideas. So I'm going to forget that, right now, and I'll come back to that when we start exploring it. The average town wealth, it's just D6 here. Lower class, which kind of makes sense for a working class town. Town names we don't need. We came up with Port Cirric. Main resources. So basically the idea of this table is what is it famous for? I'm going to try rolling, but if I don't like the result, I'm going to skip this. 4. Fruit trees. Port Cirric is known for its fruit trees. Why not? Say they grow along the coastline. Okay, so there's a bunch of other things here. Some more of this is not necessarily things I'm going to worry about. The general town appearance, though, I think will be a good idea to roll on. This is a D10. 9. It's welcoming. Okay, well that's interesting. Alright, and some more of this are things that we'll be considering, I think, in the future. There's a lot in here about shops and different military structures and other things. Things that, you know, it suggests kind of keeping... It's not necessarily to roll on, I guess, although it can be. But it's suggesting to consider, you know, that some of these things maybe need to be included in such a town. Alright, we know a little bit about Port Cirric. And I think some of the rest of it I'll be figuring out as we go along. I'm just going to see if there's anything else in here that might be helpful. No, I'm actually going to say that kind of starts things off and gives us a bit of a sense. I'll kind of go through a little bit of this and this kind of pull all this information together to create a little profile in Port Cirric and go from there. But for now, that's pretty much all I'm going to do for now, because I think I've worked myself up to the point that I can start. Now, I've got all these binders, books, whatever. I'm going to use a little bit of everything to to kind of create my Hexcrawl game. But I also don't want it just to be about exploration. I do want to have adventures kind of in the works, right? I might eventually adapt some of the some of my collection of old school adventures and just kind of like put them somewhere within the world. You know, perhaps I could take, say, like, you know, Keep on the Borderlands and throw it, you know, many, 100 kilometers inland or something, and kind of go from there, and it could be a point of interest to explore. We'll see. Or I can just continue to do it as I'm really expecting to here, and just create adventures as I go along. So I think what I have decided here is I am going to use scenes, at least, but I'm not going to use them necessarily in a traditional sense, I guess. The scenes are going to be a little more broad, and calling the end of a scene might not be what I would do, say, in my Edge of the Empire campaign. It'll be a little more open-ended, I think. That's because it needs to be. But I still want to use the threads list and the characters list here, so we've got some things that are going on and that we're pushing towards accomplishing, and we slowly generate a list of NPCs that are also important to the story. I'm kind of looking forward to this. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm just going to kind of throw this back onto the start page here, and then I'm going to just say adios. Have a good one. Next time I'll begin my little hex crawl and see kind of what happens. Take it easy.